Welcome back, guys. Before we proceed, do make sure you hit also the like button and also the subscribe button. So right here inside our main dot file, you could see we just have the normal widget, the material widget with the theme data and also a home with a center text widget. But quickly before we proceed, go ahead to your scaffold and click on pop spec file. Here, go ahead and add these three dependencies. So in our previous tutorials, I kind of showed you what dependencies are. So if you're coming from Node.js, you could understand that we work mostly with dependencies when we want to use external libraries or some cool stuffs that is not part of our application. So you could see here we have the Flutter icons, the convert, and also the HTTP. I'm just going to close that. So back here in our home, we just have to clear this text file in order to get rid of this signal text over here. So I'm just going to clear that. And the first thing I have to do is to introduce the safe area in order to avoid the status bar. And then the safe area is going to have a child, which is going to be a scaffold. So inside the scaffold is going to accept the app bar and also the body. So for the app bar, we are going to use the app bar widget. Then the app bar widget is going to accept a background color. We are going to use colors.white. So if you can recall in the application, we are using a top status bar, a top app bar white. And then there's going to be by default an elevation with a box shadow, but we don't want that. So we can just simply say we don't want an elevation. So you just type elevation and set that to 0. So for now, let's just go ahead and save this and see the output of our application. So right here, you could see how it does look like. Then we are going to have the title widget, which is going to be a text. Then we can give it a signal. And then here we are going to have a text style. Sorry for that. We're going to have a style with a text style. And inside that text style, we are going to have a font size of 16. We are also going to have a font weight of w900, and then lastly we are going to have a color, which is color. So if you're familiar with how Flutter uses their color hex codes, you have to put 0xff, then you can put the number of codes you want to put at the end, the hex values. And right here in our minimap, you could see we have that black color. So just go ahead and save that without adding that invited quote or invited comma. So right here, you could see that signal text, which is actually looking nice. The only thing that we are lacking here is that we are not adding that something that looked like an icon button, but we are not going to be needing that because it's not really that necessary. But you could see we have this perfect and nice text. One thing I also forgot to show you is that we are also using the font family. So in the pop spec file, you just scroll down here. We're actually using a font family, which I commented out, but you can just go ahead and comment it. And here I'm using a font that I'm using from our fonts at set folder. So here I kind of showed you how to use this font in the previous tutorials. So you can just go ahead and comment it out, or if you want to use it, you can just go ahead and link it properly to your own. So if you notice here, I kind of did some mistake, but I'm just going to leave that for you. So I'm not going to save that, so I'm not going to use that font. So back here in our application, the next thing we have to do is to target the action widget. So for the action is going to be an array of widgets. Then inside of it, we are going to have an icon button. So inside that icon button is going to accept an icon. So an icon is going to take the icon widget, and then we can use the icons.search. And here you can just give it a comma and give it a size of 30. So that's how we can use an icon widget. So also we are going to give it a color. We are going to use color 0xff. Then you can give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we can add an unpressed to remove that error. And then we can just save that. And when we save that, you could see the effect of that search icon over there. So one more thing also we have to do is to just grab this line of code and just paste it beneath here. And then we can put a comma here. Then when we save, it's going to still give us that search icon, but we don't want to use a search icon. We want to use a custom icon. So a custom icon we are going to be using is coming from one of the dependencies that we are using over here in our pub/spec file. So when we began, I actually made a reference to Flutter icons. So from there, we can just use the material icon. So over here, I'm just going to say, we don't want to use icon search. What we want to use simply is a material icon. So I can say icon, then I can bring down the material community icons. So if you put things correctly, you should get that recommendation. Then you can put dots, and it's going to recommend a lot of icons to you. Then you can say dots, let's say dots vertical. So when I save that and our application refreshes, we are going to see the dot vertical over there. So let's kind of make things very fast. One more thing we also forgot to do is to add a size. So we can say icon size of 20, and let's save that, and you can see that dot over there with the search icon. So we're actually done with our app bar. So the next thing now is going to be the body. Just go ahead and uncomment that. And for the body, we are going to be using a method called user list. So before we go over to the body, let's just quickly finish up with the home screen. And we are going to finish the floating action button. So let me just go ahead and bring that down. So for the floating action button, we are going to be using a column widget. And inside our widget, we are going to be targeting the main axis. We want everything in the vertical axis to stay on the end. Then we are going to have a children. So inside these children, we are going to be using the floating action button widget. Then it's going to accept a child. You can give it an icon with icons.photo. So I already showed you how you can use custom icons. Then we have a color. So make sure you type this color inside the icons widget, not outside of it, or you're going to have an error. So we have a color, which is colors.black. So we're going to be using black 87. So when I save that, you should definitely see that color over there. So we want to give this a background of white rather than using that bluish background. So here, for us to get rid of that error, just make sure you add a function called onPressed. Then we have a hero tag of null. Then here we have a background color of colors.white. And when we save that, you could see that fab icon over there, and it's looking pretty nice and very, very good. So the next icon we are going to be adding is also a floating action button with an icon of icon widget. So make sure you use the icons widget.edit, and we want to add sorry for that inconvenience. So let's just go over it again, icons.edit, and we want to add the onPressed, which is just a function. And then lastly, we can set the hero tag to null. So when we save, you could see we have these two icons, but it's kind of joined together. For us to separate that, we can just use something called size box. So inside the size box, we can just simply give it a height of 12. And when we save that, it's going to give us a little bit of space between the two icons, and everything is looking pretty nice. So right now, let's just go over to the body section of it, and once more uncomment this. Just go over to your screen/home folder and create a file called users list. And inside the users list, there are some couple of imports that we're going to make quickly. The first one is going to be a math. The second one is going to be an async for making a request. So for the math, we're going to be using a random function from that math class. And also the last one is going to be a converter that is going to be converting our JSON object from our request. And that's it. So make sure you type things properly. So this is supposed to be convert. And we're going to create a stateless class, which is users list, and it's going to extend a stateless widget. And there you could see we can bring down the override, and when we bring down the override, we can just use the widgets build, and we can build from the context. And then lastly, we can return something like a container, and inside a container we can return let's say a child with a text of users list. And we can just go ahead and close that properly. So when we save this and come over to our main.dat file, all we just simply have to do is to bring down the function over here and call it here over, instantiate the function in our body widget. So right here you could see we have a stateless widget, and the way a stateless widget works is that the data is not immutable. Let's say for example I have a final string here, name, and also I have a final string, a final integer of count. So the way a stateless widget works is that the data is not immutable. You can't update the data on runtime. So you just have to, let's say, bring down your constructor, and inside your constructor you could just say this.name and also this.count, and inside your text inside your text you could say username, then you can say $name, or you could say $count. So then let's say this function is coming from something else, or you are calling this method from another class. Let's say for example I can just come over here and say the name. I can say name is, name is Samuel, and let's say the count, make sure you put quotes. Let's say the count is 24. So when I save that and come over here and save it, you see you're gonna see users list, and here we have Samuel and 24. So you could see we can't dynamically update this data because it's like it's just stagnant. But why I wanted to touch this part of the tutorial is because I kind of mentioned in our last tutorial that we're going to talk about stateful widgets. So with the help of stateful widget, we can update our data dynamically. Unlike stateless widgets, once you pass the data, you can't update it again. So we are going to be talking about the stateful widget right now. So what we can just do is simply go back to our users list, clear everything here and save back. And we are going to get rid of this constructor and also these two things there, and just go ahead and save our application. So just go ahead and save, and everything is going to return to normal. And here we're going to create a class called Signal List, and it's going to extend a stateful widget, and we are going to bring down the constructor with the key. So whenever we pass the key, all we just have to do is to pass things that is going to be coming from our constructor. So we have a super key of key, then we have a final string of title. So this is just a string. So you could see the string that we are passing from our constructor is what we see over here. So you could see we are still having this error here because we've not yet made reference to the state. Whenever you want to update your UI, it's going to be using the state to actually give you a current value and re-update the value for you. So we can just say here override. So we have the signal list state, create states. So make sure you spell things correctly, and it's going to instantiate the new signal list states. And here we can now create a class called signal list state. So when you create a class, we can now extend that class to our state, and it's going to accept the signal list. And when we close that, we can now use the method So here, do not forget to bring down your override once more and your widgets. That's not what we want to do, but we could say widget build. We have the build context, and that clears that error. So you could see right now we have everything working perfectly. So we are not yet returning anything. So here we can just return a simple container widget and close that, and in order to get that error away. So right here you see we have a signal list class which is stateful, and you can dynamically update this data. Let's say you are calling this data on each button click. You could see that whenever you're passing the value, it's going to be updating your state continually and rendering that output for you on your container. So that's it for that state. What I have to do right now is to come over here and get rid of this text. I can now call this function called signal list. Here I can just bring down an integer with a count of 0. And once we do that, inside this container, we are going to have a child of column, because I just want to show you how this works. And we're going to have a children. So inside here, we're going to have a stateless text, which is going to have a count, which is going to be coming from our count, and we are going to have a raised button. So this raised button is going to have an unpressed, and also is going to have a child of text, and we can just add click me there. And here we are going to call a function. So inside this function, all we just simply have to do is to set state, and inside that state we can just say count plus plus, which is going to increment the count value. And when I come over here and click on this, you could see with the help of Stateful Widgets, we can update our data dynamically, and it's going to render automatically for us without wasting of time. So that's a little bit about Stateful Widgets. The next step for us to do is create a file called models.dat inside the models folder. And we're going to be returning a class, or we just go ahead and create a class with a final integer of index and also a final string of name. And here we have the user, which is this.index and also this.name. So we are not getting this correctly because we are using users over here. And you can just go ahead and close that, so that it's going to we are not supposed to be getting an error. Okay, that solves it. So this is just going to be a data structure that is going to be returned whenever we make an assign request. We want to construct our own data this way. So that's simply what we are just doing over here. And inside our user list, we are going to be making a request to JSON placeholder/users, which is going to give us 10 random fake user ID. So that's what we are going to be doing. And before we proceed, we are going to be making a request. So before that, we have to import something at the top here. We are going to be importing a package called http/http.dat, and we want to import that as HTTP. So that was not supposed to give us an error, and that's because we misspell things. And also make sure you spell things correctly, or else you're going to have an error. And we're going to create a function called getUsers. And this users function is going to be an assign function. And whenever you're using Flutter, you're going to be making an assign function, you have to bring in what is called future. So with the help of future, you can make an assign function, and you have to just give it a return type of the data list that you want to return. So we're going to be returning a list that is going to be having a structure of user. So that's just this minor thing that we are doing there. So here we are going to have a data, and this data is going to await http.get, and it's going to be making a request to this link, grabbing our 10 users for us, and then we can just create a list of user. So it's just going to be a simple array, So I know that this might be confusing you. Don't worry, if you're coming from Kotlin or Java, you will have an idea of what I'm doing. So right here, we are not getting this because we've not yet imported that user from our models. So that error goes away once we import that user from our models. And whenever our application launches this user list, it's going to be making that request. And whenever that request is going to be made, it's going to grab 10 users and store them in this data variable. So for us to access that 10 users, which is going to be an array, and construct our own data, we can just use the for loop for each user in, let's say, first of all, sorry guys, we didn't decode this because with the help of this package over here called convert, we can actually have access to decode and decode our value. So we can say JSON data is JSON.decode, and we want to decode the data.body, which is going to convert it to an object for us. So you can see right now we're using that convert function over there. So sorry, once more, back in the for loop, we can just say for each of the user in JSON data, we want to have access to the user, which is going to be a user. Right here, we are going to be constructing our own user. And don't forget that you have to add a type in front of your variable. So here we have the user and we have the ID, and also we have the user and we have the name. So when we get these things right, you see the error goes away, and we can now add the users to our users list. So we can just add that single user, and lastly, we can just return that users. So that's how we can actually return a list. So what you see here is that we are making an async request, which is going to be returning a list with a data structure of users. So that's exactly what you see here. We are just using type. So if you're familiar with TypeScript, or if you're familiar with Kotlin or Java, you see you use types a lot when you're working with them. Right now, let's go ahead and complete our application. So right now, what I'm going to do is to create a random color, which is a function that is going to return a colors.primaries, and we just want to return a random colors number from colors primary. And right here inside our container, we are going to have a child, and it's going to be making use of the feature builder. The feature builder is going to be calling the function called getUsers. And then we are going to have a builder. Make sure you spell things correctly because this is supposed to be getUsers, and here we are using, okay, we are using double underscores. That was supposed to be a single underscore. And the builder is going to accept a build context. And it's going to accept as well and assign snapshots. So this is just our data. Then inside our builder, we are going to check if there was a data return or if it was null. So first of all, let's check for a null value. So let's say when our data is about to return, or when our data is still equals to null, we want to show something like a container with a loading text icon. So with a loading text, not a text icon. And then in the case that our data was able to return, we just want to get rid of that loading, and then we have to return a list view.builder, which is going to accept an item count of snapshots.data.length. And then we have the item builder. So the item builder is exactly what we are going to now use to build our list style. So let's say builder, once more, build context, not the builder. So let's say build context, and it's going to accept an integer of index. Then we are going to return an inkwell. So an inkwell helps us to have that nice ripple effect at the back of our application, or sorry, at the back of each user list. So that was supposed to be a widget and not a function. So make sure you close things properly not to have an error. Then we are going to have a child. But before we have a child, let's set the splash color. So let's say we are going to be using a getRandomColor function that we created. So that was why we actually generated that getRandomColor, because we don't want to use a single color for each splash. Then here we are going to have a child of an ink. Then this child of an ink is going to have a child as well of a list style. So a list style is exactly all the lists of each user. Then we are going to have the leading icon. So the leading icon has something called a circle avatar. So let's just do it this way. Let's just use circle avatar. And this circle avatar is going to have a background color of getRandomColor. And then it's going to have a child of text, snapshot.data, index.name. So make sure this is supposed to be before the name, but we only want just two texts. Like in the case that we save this right now, you see we have that circle avatar, but we have the full names showing there. We just want like two texts. The way we can do it is to use a substring, just like with the way we do in JavaScript, from 0 to 2, which is from 0 to first letter, and also we have to transform it to uppercase. So that's how we can actually use this. So when we check back, you can see right now we have just like two texts, no stress about that. Then we have an on tab event. Okay, sorry guys, this was not an icon button. I was thinking it's an icon button. Then the next one is going to be a title. The title is going to have a text, and it's going to have snapshot.data. And we can pass the index or the current user.name. Then lastly, we are going to have a subtitle for that. Then we have a text. So for this subtitle, we want to use snapshots.data index.name is on Signal. So that's what we want to use there, but let's go ahead and give it a small styling. So for the styling, we just want to say a text style. We have font size of 12.0. So that's it, and we can go ahead and save that. You see right now we are having something that looks very nice and very, very cool. And we also have the trailing. So for the trailing, we are going to have a new column. Inside that, we are going to have the main axis alignment. We want to align everything to the center, and we have the children, which is all widgets. So we have a new text of January 16th. I think right now we are on February 4th. So let me just use February 4th. So let's just assume that every single person joined on February 4th. And let's just go ahead and save that. And right now you could see the date of each user. So our application seems not to be looking very responsive, because I think that we missed something. So for this inkwell, we didn't add a splash color. We did, but it's not actually showing. Or maybe let's just go ahead and add that on top. That was supposed to actually show us some couple of ripple effects. So that was because we didn't add an on top. So right now you could see we have everything using almost the same color, which we don't want. So for us to fix that, it's also very simple. Just come back to your get random color. Instead of you to use a fixed digit here, we can now use a random function. And here we could say dot next integer colors dot primaries dot length, which is going to be using a random color for us. So when we save that, you could see we have a couple of random colors, and you can see it's applying immediately, and everything is looking very, very nice and very sweet. So that's how we can build a very nice Signal interface application. So guys, in the later future, we are still going to go over to building a full stack Signal application. We are going to add the ability for us to use Socket.io and also maybe use Node.js to actually build this kind of application. So if you've really come this far, do make sure to hit that like button and also the subscribe button, and see you next time. Bye bye.